there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a little while since I have done a napkin card or a serviette card, depending on what you call them, and I have had these ones sitting here on my desk for a fair while, and I've kind of known what I wanted to do with them, but I've just never gotten around to it. So I had the perfect person to give this to, so I thought I would skip 2. Now I unfold it, it is folded in 4, and this is kind of a repeating pattern, and then a mirror image down the bottom. So I am going to cut this up a little bit before I start making my image a little bit more interesting than just gluing this straight down onto a card. So you can definitely do that. These are the napkins that I forgot to show you, and I am going to first of all cut out that whole lighthouse with kind of the background as well. Then I'm going to cut out just one of the little lighthouses, and then I quite like those images down the side, and at this point I kind of had a different idea in mind where I was going with this whole thing. Now when you are creating napkin cards, you need to remember that napkins will have either 2 or 3 layers. You need to make sure you peel these off. Now I have done a video using these scraps, the scraps that you kind of pull off the tissue paper, because there are some awesome techniques that you can do with these as well, so don't throw them away. And that one you can kind of see the light pattern through it, so that was really interesting too. So I will link in the description box down below that shows what I did, the card that I created using those scraps. Now I'm going to use the multi, medium and the matte finish from Ranger. Now this is exactly the same as what is in my glue bottles that I pop in there, and of course I know you guys know, but I have a video on my channel. It's a really popular question that I get asked, how do you get it in the glue bottles? And so I made a video showing exactly that, and it's a really easy way to do it. So if you just search how to fill a glue bottle on YouTube, and it should be the first one that pops up. And so all I am doing here is I'm using a little paintbrush, and I am putting down a nice flat layer down onto some card, and then pop the napkin down on top of it. And then I kind of work my way from the center to the outside and make sure that there are no kind of bubbles or wrinkles. If you want to have wrinkles and bubbles and things like that, then go for gold. I quite like creating the texture, and you can always add ink over top and things to catch the top of the serviette. But for this card, I'm going pretty much nice and smooth. I just really like the pattern. Having a pack of napkins saves me having to purchase stamps like this. It saves me having to colour. Yeah, and as I said, I had the perfect person who I wanted to give this to. And I guess lighthouses and things aren't something that I use all the time, so for me it probably doesn't make sense to invest in a big stamp set like this when I can have these napkins and create a really dimensional project using just these napkins. So once I have gone over top, I'm going to leave that to dry. You can definitely use your heat gun, but it takes around, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so to make sure that it is properly dry. I just ended up walking away and doing a couple of jobs, and then here you can see it is completely dry, and I'm going to cut these apart. Now I did like those stripes up the top, and that is kind of what inspired me for this card, but I decided that I wanted to die cut out that main kind of focal image there, and I'm going to use this kind of postcard die or post stamp die and make sure I kind of get a little bit of the background in as well. I'm going to use some mint tape to hold this down. This is a really nice low-tack tape, and that's not going to rip any of the napkin that I have already put some time and effort into. So that just creates a really nice kind of focal point, but I'm going to do a whole lot more with this to make it not quite so flat and plain. Now I definitely like keeping it real here, and I'm going to show you 2 different versions that I did of this card, because I did the first version, and this is using the blueprint sketch, and this is a Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, and it becomes a really good watercolor. And I'm going straight onto my card base with a paintbrush, and I'm going to paint in some stripes. And as I said, those stripes at the top of the napkin kind of inspired me to do this, and this is a really basic background that you can do for any kind of focal point. This is a really good one. I made sure to make my lines really wobbly and not straight, and then that way it doesn't have to be perfect. But when I'm looking back on this, I kind of like version A perfectly fine. But Spoiler alert, I'm about to pull this all apart in a minute as well. But I am taking you through my process, and sometimes I find that helpful as well, seeing the process of how somebody kind of thinks things through, the decisions that we make, and that it's okay to change our mind, and that it's okay to kind of salvage pieces and just, you know, do what we think looks good at the time. And looking back, I think this looks perfectly fine with the blue, but I really like how I did it in version 2 as well. So I'm just adding a little bit of ink to the edges there. That is the Blue Belle VersaFine Clear inks, and I just use a little finger dauber to add a little bit of ink to the edges, just so that it stood out from the blue behind it a little bit more. Now here is the second lighthouse that I glued down, and I just want the lighthouse, and I am going to actually cut out the image, kind of fussy cut. It's not too hard, obviously, the shape is pretty simple, but I am going to take the red stripes of the lighthouse only. So this way I'm able to pop these up on the card and add a little bit of dimension, and to me it feels like I didn't quite just kind of pop it down, stick it down, and I was done. This feels like I've put in some effort. I've made it kind of come to life a little bit more than just being a napkin. And I really like doing this when you kind of look at a serviette or a napkin and you can see things that you can make dimensional. I don't mean things that like plants and things that need super crazy fussy cutting. Don't make life hard for yourself, but look for those serviettes that you are able to pop up something, whether it be a butterfly, a lighthouse, a bird, anything. Just see what you can kind of pop up and add a little bit of dimension to. And of course, serviettes or napkins often come in packs of 10 or 20, or if your friend gives you one or two, or even on the same serviette, patterns are often repeated, so you're able to kind of get the exact same image and then do it again, but pick out some of those elements and pop them up. Now here I have popped up my main piece here on some foam tape. I'm popping it down onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base that we created, and then when I put these on, kind of from the, I guess, looking straight down here, that you can't actually see that there's a whole lot of dimension. Now this was confusing me a little bit because it's a mirror image and all the little windows are to the other side. So you can see at the top there it was to the right, now the window's to the left. So it was confusing me for just a second to make sure I had the right pieces, but I do. It's just because I glued down the mirror image one of it, so it was the other side. But it's got some really nice dimension there and it kind of pops up off the card nicely. Now here's where I changed my mind. So I am going to heat this with my heat gun, and this kind of releases some of the adhesive. I used some very, very sticky double-sided tape. This is my favorite double-sided tape, and I love it because it is so sticky and I know that it's not going to come apart. But for this time I did. So I heated it for quite a little bit with my heat gun. My image from the front has been completely saved. There's no wrinkles or bends in it or anything. And I'm just going to heat it a little bit more to pull off some more of that backing. And this is where I do a really fun technique, kind of the same thing. I just felt like the blue on blue was just too, it just didn't sit right for me, put it that way. Anyhow, so I'm taking a piece of red cardstock and all I'm doing is going to rip this into some lines. Now, nothing could be more simple than doing this. And I kind of just rip down. I want the line to be semi straight. I don't know if straight is the word, but you know, I don't want it to be like going on big angles or anything. And I picked a red cardstock that matched my lighthouse. Now it was kind of a fluke that I had this because I think I maybe have 4 or 5 pieces of cardstock that is this size, and I happen to have one the perfect red that I needed. I have a very small craft space and I do not have room or anything for storing lots of different colors of cardstock. Usually you will see me create my own backgrounds and color my own backgrounds with inks. That's what I've chosen to invest in. But for this one, I just somehow happened to have the right color red and it worked out well. So as I said, I'm just making some strips. You can see that these are not perfect at all, and I'm just kind of taking my time and kind of trying to be happy with whatever I rip. Sometimes it's better to just kind of go fast, or you can kind of do your best to kind of get the shape that you would like. But honestly, this is a really fun technique. I've used this one before on my channel as well, and I'm sure that you guys have, even if you want to create the same kind of effect but you don't have the cardstock, then you can always ink up the cardstock first of all and then rip it after you've inked it, and you'll get kind of a nice similar effect, maybe even with some white core showing from the cardstock that you ripped. But anyhow, all I'm doing here is just using some of the matte medium, the same matte medium that I used to glue down the initial images, and I have that in my glue bottle, and I know that it's nice and strong. I know that it's not going to go anywhere. I get my first stripe on, and then from there it's really plain sailing and nice and easy. So just popping them across, and again, I know that the center is going to be a little bit covered up, so I'm not worried that that one's a little bit wonky there. Right in the center, that will be fine. And I like to have them touching the top and the bottom. I feel like that makes a cleaner card base. Now, any of the supplies that I have used today that I am able to link, I will link down below. I don't have a link for these lighthouse napkins, I'm afraid. These are just something that I have had for, I'm going to say, at least 10 years. I've had them for a long time. I bought them a long time ago with my mum because she liked them, and I just liked them too much to use them. So finally I pulled them out and used one for this at least. So that's a start. So I'm popping it down onto this red card base now, and I like those gorgeous red stripes. This is going to finish up my card for today, and I don't even need a sentiment on this one. I'm just going to write all of my message on the inside. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have found this useful, and I appreciate you watching this video so very much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!